I never thought my expertise in catching liars would save my own life. After 14 years investigating insurance fraud, I'd learned to spot deception in the smallest details. A forged signature here, a fabricated timeline there. What I never expected was that the most elaborate fraud I'd ever encounter would be orchestrated by the woman sleeping next to me every night. My name is Daniel Brooks, and this is the story of how my wife tried to destroy our family with nothing more than pen and paper. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday in March, slipped under my office door at Piedmont Insurance like a venomous snake. I found it when I returned from lunch, a plain white envelope with my name scrawled across the front in block letters. No return address, no company logo, nothing to indicate where it came from. Inside, the message was brief but chilling. Stay away from her. You don't deserve what you have. I read it twice, my investigator's mind automatically cataloging details. Handwritten on generic copy paper, blue ballpoint pen, shaky lettering that could be disguised or nervous. The postmark showed Winston-Salem, dated yesterday. Probably some disgruntled claimant, I muttered, sliding the letter into a clear evidence bag out of habit. After 12 years investigating insurance fraud, I'd dealt with my share of threats from people whose claims I'd exposed as fake. Last month, I'd helped prosecute a woman who'd staged a slip and fall at a grocery store. The month before that, a man who'd claimed his healthy back was injured in a fender bender. Still, something about this letter felt different. More personal. The handwriting had an urgency to it that made my skin crawl. I locked the evidence bag in my desk drawer and tried to focus on the workers' compensation case I was reviewing. But throughout the afternoon, my mind kept drifting back to those 7 words. Stay away from her. You don't deserve what you have. Who was her? And what did I supposedly have that I didn't deserve? When I got home that evening, Lisa was in the kitchen preparing dinner, her auburn hair pulled back in the messy bun she always wore when cooking. At 38, she still looked like the real estate agent who'd caught my eye at a networking event 15 years ago. Confident, put together, the kind of woman who could sell a house to anyone. How was your day? She asked without looking up from the stove. Interesting. I watched her face for any reaction. Got a weird letter at work. Oh? She glanced over her shoulder, eyebrows raised. From who? That's the thing. Anonymous? Threatening? Now she turned fully, wooden spoon in hand. Threatening? Daniel, that's serious. Did you call the police? Her concern seemed genuine, but then again, Lisa had always been good at reading people. It was what made her successful in real estate. She could make anyone feel like she cared about their problems. Not yet. Could be related to one of my cases. You know how people get when I prove they're lying about their claims. Still, you should report it. She turned back to the pasta sauce, stirring with more force than necessary. What if it escalates? You're probably right. I moved closer, studying her profile. The letter mentioned her. Said I should stay away from her. Any idea who that might refer to? Lisa's stirring paused for just a fraction of a second. So brief I might have imagined it. Could be anyone, right? Maybe someone thinks you're investigating their wife or girlfriend. Maybe. Tyler bounded into the kitchen then, backpack slung over his shoulder, grass stains on his baseball uniform. Our 12-year-old son had my dark hair but Lisa's green eyes, and lately he'd been shooting up like a weed. Mom, can Jake come over this weekend? His parents said it was okay if you're cool with it. Of course, honey. We'll order pizza. Lisa ruffled his hair as he grabbed an apple from the counter. How was practice? Coach says I might make starting lineup next week. Tyler's chest puffed with pride. We're playing Jefferson Middle on Saturday. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the March air. Jefferson Middle School. If someone was threatening me about her, and they knew enough to be specific about Tyler's activities. That's great, buddy, I managed. Why don't you go start your homework? Dinner's almost ready. As Tyler thundered up the stairs, Lisa shot me a questioning look. "You okay? You look pale." "Just tired." But my mind was racing. What if this wasn't about a case? What if someone was watching our family? That night, after Tyler finished his homework and Lisa had gone to bed early claiming a headache, I sat in my home office reviewing the letter again. In my profession, I'd learned that every document told a story. Paper quality, ink type, writing pressure, letter formation, they all provided clues about the author. This letter was written on standard 20-pound copy paper, available at any office supply store. The blue ink appeared to be from a basic ballpoint pen, probably a Bic. The block lettering was deliberate, clearly an attempt to disguise natural handwriting. But there were tells. The way the A in away had a slight leftward slant, how the Y in you dropped below the baseline with a distinctive curve. I photographed the letter from multiple angles, then locked it back in my briefcase. Tomorrow I'd make copies and start building a file. If more letters came, I'd have documentation. I just hoped there wouldn't be more letters. The second letter arrived exactly 1 week later, same method, slipped under my office door while I was out. This time the message was more ominous. "You don't deserve her. She'll be mine soon." My hands trembled slightly as I photographed the evidence. Same paper, same pen, same disguised block lettering, but this letter felt more confident, bolder. The spacing was more uniform, suggesting the writer was becoming comfortable with their deception. "She'll be mine soon." That phrase sent ice through my veins. This wasn't about a case. This was about Lisa. I called her immediately. "Brooks Realty, this is Lisa." "It's me. Where are you right now?" "At the office. Why? You sound upset." "I got another letter. This one specifically mentions that someone wants to take you away from me." Silence on the other end. Then, "Daniel, you're scaring me." "What exactly did it say?" I read her the message, hearing my own voice shake with anger. "Lisa, I think someone is stalking you, or us, or our family." "Oh my God." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Who would do this?" "I don't know, but I'm calling the police. This has gone beyond workplace harassment." "Should I come home?" "No, stay where you are. There are people around at your office. I'll handle this and pick up Tyler from school myself. Don't go anywhere alone, okay?" "Okay, Daniel, I'm scared." "I know, me too, but I'm going to figure this out." I hung up and immediately dialed the Winston-Salem Police Department. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Detective Karen Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in harassment and stalking cases. "Mr. Brooks, given your profession, I assume you've preserved the evidence properly?" "Absolutely." I slid the 2 evidence bags across her desk. Photographs, documentation of when and where they were found, no contamination. She examined the letters through the plastic, nodding approvingly. "Clean chain of custody." "Good. Tell me about your family situation. Any recent divorces, custody disputes, workplace conflicts involving your wife?" "Nothing like that. We've been married 14 years. No major drama. Lisa's a real estate agent, well respected in the community. Tyler's 12, honor student, plays baseball." "What about your work? Any recent cases that might have generated threats?" I ran through my last 6 months of investigations. A staged car accident, a fake slip and fall, a construction worker claiming a back injury who'd been filmed playing basketball. All of them resulted in denied claims, but this feels different, more personal. Detective Martinez made notes as I talked. "The escalation pattern concerns me. First letter was general, second was specific about taking your wife. If there's a third letter, we might see direct threats or specific actions. What do you recommend?" "File a formal report. I'll have patrol units increase their presence in your neighborhood. And Mr. Brooks, given your expertise, I'm sure you understand the importance of documentation. If any more letters arrive, don't handle them directly. Call me immediately. I left the police station feeling slightly better but still unsettled. Someone out there was watching my family, planning something. But who? And why? When I picked up Tyler from school, I found myself scanning the parking lot for anyone who didn't belong. When we got home, I checked all the locks twice. When Lisa returned from work that evening, I watched her face carefully as she read copies of both letters. "This is terrifying," she said, sinking into our kitchen chair. "Who would write something like this?" "I've been thinking about that all day." "Anyone at work been giving you trouble? Difficult clients? Maybe someone whose offer didn't work out?" Lisa shook her head. "Nothing unusual. I mean, real estate can be stressful, but this..." She gestured at the letters. "This is sick." "What about that new guy you mentioned? Ryan something?" "Ryan Parker?" She looked surprised. "He's a commercial realtor. We've worked together on a couple mixed-use properties, but he's completely professional and married, with kids. Still, he knows your schedule, knows you work with residential clients, could have access to information about our family." "Daniel, that's ridiculous. Ryan's one of the most respected agents in Winston-Salem. He wouldn't..." She stopped, staring at the letters. "You really think someone I work with could be doing this?" "I think we can't rule anyone out. Tomorrow I want you to make a list of everyone who has your work schedule, everyone who knows details about our family, clients, colleagues, vendors, anyone." Lisa nodded, but something in her expression bothered me. A flicker of... what? Fear? Guilt? That night, I lay awake listening to her breathe beside me, wondering if my paranoia was justified or if 14 years of catching liars had finally made me suspicious of everyone, including my own wife. The third letter arrived on a Friday. By now, I was checking under my office door every time I returned from anywhere, and I'd set up a small surveillance camera to monitor the hallway. Whoever was doing this was either very lucky or very smart. They'd managed to avoid the camera both times. "She's too good for you. Stop holding her back." This letter was different. The handwriting was cleaner, more confident. The message was longer and more specific. And there was something about the phrasing that nagged at me. "Stop holding her back" wasn't the language of a typical stalker. It suggested intimate knowledge of our relationship dynamics. I called Detective Martinez immediately. "Fourth letter," she said grimly when she examined it an hour later. "And the language is escalating. He's moving from general threats to specific accusations about your marriage." "Which suggests he knows us personally." "Exactly." "Mr. Brooks, I need to ask some difficult questions. Is there any possibility your wife is having an affair?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "No, absolutely not." "I have to ask. The phrasing in these letters suggests intimate knowledge of your relationship. She's too good for you, and stop holding her back sound like things a romantic rival might say." "Lisa's not..." I stopped. Was I sure? Over the past few months, she'd been working later hours, attending more networking events, taking calls at odd times. But that was just the real estate market. The spring selling season was always busy. "I need you to consider the possibility," Detective Martinez continued. "If your wife is involved with someone, voluntarily or otherwise, these letters could be coming from that person." "You're suggesting someone Lisa knows is threatening me to get me out of the picture?" "I'm suggesting we explore all possibilities. Has your wife's behavior changed recently? New schedule, new friends, unexplained absences?" I thought about Lisa's late nights, her increased attention to her appearance, the way she'd been guarding her phone more carefully. Details I'd attributed to work stress suddenly took on a darker significance. "Maybe," I admitted. "Some changes, but nothing dramatic. I'd like to interview her directly. And Mr. Brooks, I strongly recommend you don't discuss this conversation with her beforehand. If she's involved, we need her honest reactions. That evening, I watched Lisa more carefully than I had in years. She seemed nervous, checking her phone frequently, starting conversations and then trailing off mid-sentence. When Tyler asked about weekend plans, she seemed distracted. "Everything okay?" I asked after Tyler went to bed. "Just work stress. This market is crazy right now." But she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Lisa, Detective Martinez wants to interview you about the letters." Now she looked up, and I caught something that made my blood run cold. For just a moment, she looked terrified. Not scared of a stalker, terrified of being caught. "Interview me? Why?" "Standard procedure when there's a threat against a family member. She needs to understand your routine, your clients, anyone who might have access to information about us." "Of course." Lisa's voice was too bright, too eager. "Whatever helps." But as she headed upstairs, I noticed her hands were shaking. The fourth letter arrived the following Monday, and this time I was ready. I'd positioned the surveillance camera more strategically, and I'd asked building security to monitor the delivery times more closely. But somehow, whoever was doing this had still managed to slip the envelope under my door undetected. "Time is running out. Let her go or face consequences. We know Tyler's schedule at Jefferson Middle School." My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just about Lisa anymore. They were threatening Tyler, my 12-year-old son, who had nothing to do with whatever sick game was being played. I photographed the evidence with trembling hands, then immediately called Detective Martinez. "Emergency meeting. They threatened my son." An hour later, I sat in the police station conference room with Detective Martinez and two other officers studying the fourth letter under bright lights. "This changes everything," Detective Martinez said. "Direct threat against a minor, specific knowledge of the child's school. We're moving to active investigation status." "What does that mean?" "Full surveillance of your family, forensic analysis of all evidence, interviews with everyone in your wife's professional and social circle." She looked at me seriously. "Mr. Brooks, I need you to consider moving Tyler to a secure location until we resolve this. My parents live in Charlotte. He could stay there." "Good. And I want to move forward with that interview with your wife. Today. She's showing a house this afternoon, but she should be available after 4. "Perfect. And Mr. Brooks, don't mention the school threat to her beforehand. I want to see her natural reaction." When Lisa walked into the police station that afternoon, she looked composed but pale. She wore her professional outfit, navy blazer, cream blouse, minimal jewelry, the uniform of a successful real estate agent. Detective Martinez led the interview while I observed from behind one-way glass. Lisa answered questions about her clients, her schedule, her colleagues. She mentioned Ryan Parker among several other agents she worked with regularly, describing him as a consummate professional and successful commercial realtor. When Detective Martinez showed her the letters, Lisa's reaction seemed genuine. Shock at the first two, growing alarm at the third, and horror at the school threat. "Tyler's school?" Her voice cracked. "Someone's watching our son?" "The specificity suggests intimate knowledge of your family routine," Detective Martinez said. "Can you think of anyone who would have that information?" "Any of our friends, neighbors, other parents at school, my clients?" Lisa's voice trailed off. "Detective, you don't think this is someone we know, do you?" "It's possible." "Mrs. Brooks, I need to ask directly. Are you involved in any relationship outside your marriage?" The question hung in the air like a bomb. Through the one-way glass, I watched Lisa's face cycle through emotions: surprise, indignation, and then something that looked like panic. "No, absolutely not. I love my husband." "No one at work who's shown romantic interest? No clients who've crossed professional boundaries?" "No, nothing like that." But I could see the lie in her body language, the way she shifted in her chair, the slight tremor in her voice, the way she couldn't maintain eye contact. After 14 years of marriage and 12 years of investigating fraud, I knew when someone was lying. My wife was lying to the police about an affair. After the interview, we drove home in silence. Lisa stared out the passenger window while I processed what I'd observed. The woman I'd married, the mother of my child, was deceiving me about something serious enough to generate death threats. "When do you want Tyler to go to your parents?" she asked finally. "Tonight. I'll drive him to Charlotte after dinner." "Good. I'll feel better knowing he's safe." But as we pulled into our driveway, I noticed Ryan Parker's silver BMW parked across the street. When Lisa saw it, her face went white. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine. I think Ryan was showing the Henderson house to clients today. He's probably just finishing up." But the Henderson house had been sold 3 weeks ago. I'd seen the sold sign myself. That night, after I'd driven Tyler to my parents and explained that he needed to stay there for a few days due to a work situation, I returned home to find Lisa in bed, apparently asleep. But her breathing was too controlled, too careful. She was pretending. I sat in my office until 2 a.m., staring at the 4 letters spread across my desk. Someone was threatening my family, someone with intimate knowledge of our lives. My wife was lying about an affair. And somehow, these two facts were connected. The question was, how? The answer came from an unexpected source: handwriting analysis. On Tuesday morning, I met with Dr. Patricia Johnson, a forensic document examiner recommended by Detective Martinez. Dr. Johnson specialized in questioned document analysis, the scientific comparison of handwriting, ink, and paper to determine authorship. "Mr. Brooks, before we begin, I need samples of handwriting from anyone who might be a suspect," Dr. Johnson explained in her lab at Wake Forest University. "Family members, close friends, work colleagues, anyone with access to information about your family." The police collected samples yesterday from my wife's real estate colleagues, including Ryan Parker. "Good. What about family members? Your wife?" I hesitated. Detective Martinez said she'd handle that through official channels. Of course, but for a complete analysis, I'd also need samples of your wife's natural handwriting, grocery lists, notes to your son, anything written in a relaxed, unguarded state. That evening, while Lisa was at a late client meeting, I searched our house for samples of her handwriting. I found several grocery lists in her purse, notes to Tyler about school activities, and a birthday card she'd written to her mother last month. Looking at Lisa's natural handwriting, I felt sick. The A with its slight leftward slant. The Y that dropped below the baseline with a distinctive curve. The letter formations I'd noticed in the threatening notes. No, it couldn't be. But the more I compared, the more similarities I found. The way she dotted her I's. The pressure she applied to downstrokes. The spacing between letters. My hands shook as I photographed Lisa's handwriting samples. My wife of 14 years, the mother of my child, couldn't possibly be threatening herself to what? Leave me? Make me look unstable? Get me out of the picture so she could be with Ryan Parker? The idea was insane. But the evidence was right there in front of me. I delivered the samples to Dr. Johnson the next morning, my stomach churning with anxiety. How long for the analysis? Given the urgency of the case, I can have preliminary results by Friday afternoon. If I find significant matching characteristics, I'll call you immediately. Friday afternoon, my phone rang at 3:17 p.m. "Mr. Brooks, this is Dr. Johnson. I need to meet with you and Detective Martinez as soon as possible. My analysis has revealed some very significant findings." "What kind of findings?" "The kind that require law enforcement presence when I deliver them." 2 hours later, I sat in the police conference room with Detective Martinez and Dr. Johnson, staring at blown-up photographs of handwriting samples on the wall. "Gentlemen, after comprehensive analysis of letter formation, pen pressure, spacing patterns, and distinctive characteristics, I can state with scientific certainty that the threatening letters were written by Lisa Brooks. The words hit me like a physical assault. Detective Martinez asked questions about methodology and certainty levels, but I barely heard the answers. My wife, had written the letters threatening herself, threatening our son. The evidence is overwhelming, Dr. Johnson continued. 17 distinct matching characteristics between the known samples and the questioned letters. The attempts at disguise were sophisticated, but not sufficient to hide the underlying handwriting patterns. Why would she do this? I finally managed to ask. Detective Martinez leaned forward grimly. That's what we're going to find out. The confrontation happened that same evening, with Detective Martinez present to ensure everything was handled properly. Lisa arrived home from work at 6:30, expecting a normal Friday night. Instead, she found a police car in our driveway and her life about to explode. Lisa Brooks, you're under arrest for filing false police reports and obstruction of justice. Lisa's face went through a series of emotions: confusion, denial, and then resignation. She knew it was over. I want a lawyer, she said quietly. You have the right to remain silent. As Detective Martinez read Lisa her rights, I watched the woman I'd loved for 15 years transform into a stranger. The tears, the protestations of innocence, all of it felt like another performance, another deception. At the police station with her attorney present, the truth finally came out. Yes, she was having an affair with Ryan Parker. It had started 6 months ago during a weekend real estate conference in Asheville. What began as professional collaboration had turned into something more. Yes, she'd written the letters herself. The plan was to create a narrative of an external threat to our marriage, something that would justify her leaving me for her own safety and Tyler's protection. Yes, she'd involved our son in the deception, using specific details about his school to make the threat seem more credible. I never meant for it to go this far, she told the detectives, her voice breaking. I just wanted out of the marriage, but I knew Daniel would fight me on custody if I left him for another man. The letters were supposed to make it look like I had no choice. So you manufactured a stalking case to cover up your affair. Detective Martinez's voice was cold with disgust. I thought if there was a credible threat, Daniel would agree that Tyler and I needed to disappear for safety reasons. I could move away with Ryan, start over somewhere else. And your husband's expertise in fraud investigation never concerned you? Lisa's laugh was bitter. I thought I was smarter than him. He catches people lying about money, not about love. But she was wrong. Love might have blinded me initially, but evidence was evidence. And Lisa had left a trail of evidence that led straight back to her. The most damning piece came from Ryan Parker himself. Under police questioning, he admitted to the affair but claimed no knowledge of the threatening letters. Phone records, however, told a different story. Lisa had called Ryan immediately after each letter was discovered, sometimes before she'd even called me. She told me someone was threatening her husband, Ryan said during his interview. I offered to help however I could. I had no idea she was creating the threats herself. Whether Ryan was telling the truth or simply trying to save his own career became irrelevant when his wife filed for divorce, and the Real Estate Licensing Board opened an ethics investigation. Within 2 weeks, both Lisa and Ryan's careers in Winston-Salem were effectively over. The criminal case moved quickly. Lisa's attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, arguing that no actual harm had been done, that the letters were a misguided attempt to escape an unhappy marriage. But Assistant District Attorney Michael Finley saw it differently. Mrs. Brooks wasted hundreds of hours of police time, created genuine fear in her own child, and attempted to manipulate the legal system to gain advantage in a custody dispute. This is fraud, plain and simple. The evidence against Lisa was overwhelming. The handwriting analysis, the phone records, the inconsistencies in her statements. Everything pointed to an elaborate deception orchestrated over weeks. In the end, Lisa pled guilty to 4 counts of filing false police reports and 1 count of obstruction of justice. She received 18 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and full restitution for police investigative costs, approximately $15,000. More importantly for our family, the criminal conviction significantly impacted the divorce proceedings. Lisa's attorney had planned to argue for joint custody, claiming that I was controlling and potentially unstable, which explained her need to escape. But her own documented deception destroyed that narrative completely. Judge Patricia Wilkins was particularly harsh during the custody hearing. "Mrs. Brooks, you involved your own child in an elaborate deception designed to manipulate law enforcement and the legal system. Your actions demonstrate a concerning willingness to prioritize your own desires over your son's emotional well-being. Tyler would live with me full-time, with Lisa getting supervised visitation every other weekend." The Real Estate Licensing Board was equally unforgiving. After a formal hearing where Dr. Johnson presented her handwriting analysis, Lisa's license was revoked for conduct reflecting dishonesty, fraud, or deceit. The board ruled that manufacturing evidence in a criminal case was incompatible with the trust required in real estate transactions. Ryan Parker received a 6-month suspension and mandatory ethics training, but the scandal effectively ended his career in Winston-Salem anyway. Commercial real estate depends heavily on reputation and trust, and his association with the threatening letters case made him unemployable in local markets. Within 6 months, both Lisa and Ryan had left Winston-Salem for opportunities in other states. Tyler took the revelation about his mother surprisingly well, though I made sure he had professional counseling to process everything. At 12, he was old enough to understand that his mother had lied, but young enough that the betrayal didn't completely destroy his worldview. "Dad, did Mom ever love us?" he asked one evening as we worked on his science project. "She loved us the way she knew how, buddy. But sometimes people make really bad decisions when they're scared or confused." "Will I see her again?" "When you're ready, if you want to. But you're safe with me." Tyler nodded and went back to building his volcano model. Kids are resilient, but I made sure he kept seeing the counselor twice a month. Some wounds take time to heal. As for me, the experience left me professionally stronger but personally devastated. My expertise in fraud investigation had saved my family, but it had also revealed that I'd been living with a stranger for years. The insurance company, rather than viewing the situation as embarrassing, actually promoted me to senior fraud investigator. My ability to catch my own wife's deception became legendary in law enforcement circles, and I started receiving requests to lecture at police academies about document fraud. The Brooks case became a textbook example in forensic training programs. Dr. Johnson published a paper about it in the Journal of Forensic Document Examination, highlighting how domestic deception cases often involved more sophisticated fraud techniques than random criminal cases. 6 months after Lisa's conviction, I received an unexpected visit at work from FBI agent Sarah Williams. The Bureau was developing a new program to combat domestic document fraud, and they wanted me to consult on training protocols. "Mr. Brooks, what you accomplished in this case, applying professional fraud detection techniques to personal circumstances, represents a new frontier in law enforcement training," Agent Williams explained. "We'd like you to help develop curriculum for our domestic crimes unit." The consulting work proved rewarding both professionally and personally. It helped me process what had happened to my family while contributing to law enforcement's ability to handle similar cases. But the real healing began when I met Jennifer. Jennifer Martinez, no relation to Detective Martinez, was an 8th grade science teacher at Tyler's new school. She was 35, divorced with no children, and had the kind of genuine warmth that Lisa had always performed but never truly possessed. Our first meeting was at a parent-teacher conference where she praised Tyler's resilience and academic recovery after what she diplomatically called family changes. Tyler's an exceptional young man, she said, reviewing his test scores. He's mentioned that his father works in fraud investigation. That must be fascinating work. It has its moments, I said carefully. I'd learned to be cautious about discussing my profession with new people. Actually, I've been following the handwriting analysis case in the local news. Was that your investigation? In a manner of speaking, Jennifer's expression grew serious. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for your family. Her empathy felt genuine, not like the morbid curiosity I'd encountered from others. We talked for another 20 minutes about Tyler's progress, but also about teaching, investigating, and the challenges of single parenting. When she asked if I'd like to have coffee sometime, I almost said no. The idea of trusting another woman, of opening my life to potential deception, terrified me. But Tyler, who'd been listening from the hallway, stuck his head into the classroom. "Dad, say yes. Mrs. Martinez is cool." So I said yes. Our first coffee date lasted 4 hours. Jennifer was intelligent, funny, and refreshingly direct. When I told her the full story of Lisa's deception, she listened without judgment or excessive sympathy. "As a teacher, I see all kinds of family situations," she said finally. "What strikes me about your story isn't the betrayal. It's that you never gave up on finding the truth. Sometimes I wonder if I was blind to signs I should have noticed earlier. Maybe. But you can't live your life second-guessing every relationship because one person lied to you." Jennifer was right, of course. Over the following months, as we spent more time together, I learned to trust again. Not blindly. My investigator's instincts would always be part of who I was, but reasonably. Jennifer met my professional colleagues, my parents, my neighbors. She integrated into Tyler's life gradually, never trying to replace Lisa, but offering the kind of stable, honest presence our family needed. A year after Lisa's conviction, Jennifer and I moved in together. Tyler was initially hesitant about the arrangement, but Jennifer's patience and genuine affection won him over. "Dad, is Jennifer going to be my stepmom?" he asked one evening. "Would you like her to be?" Tyler considered this seriously. "Yeah, I think so. But can we wait until I'm in high school? I want to be old enough to walk her down the aisle at the wedding." Lisa attempted contact several times during her probation period, usually around Tyler's birthday or holidays. Her letters, ironically, now that I knew her handwriting intimately, were full of apologies and requests for forgiveness. Tyler read them with my supervision but rarely responded. On his 13th birthday, Lisa called and asked to speak with him. "Hi, Mom," he said simply. I couldn't hear her side of the conversation, but Tyler's responses were polite but distant. "I'm doing good. Yeah, Dad's taking care of me. I'm playing baseball and joining the debate team. No, I don't think I'm ready for visits yet. Okay, love you too." When he hung up, Tyler looked thoughtful. "She sounds sad." Probably she is. Making bad choices has consequences. Will she ever be able to come home? This is your home, buddy, with me and Jennifer. Your mom made her choice when she decided to lie instead of talking to us about her problems. Tyler nodded and never asked about Lisa moving home again. Jennifer officially became part of our family 2 years later, in a small ceremony at the courthouse with Tyler, serving as best man and ring bearer. Detective Martinez attended, along with my parents, Tyler's baseball coach, and several colleagues from both my insurance company and Jennifer's school. The irony wasn't lost on me that my second wedding took place in the same building where Lisa had been sentenced for trying to destroy my first marriage. But this time, everything was different. Jennifer's vows were simple and honest. "I promise to love you and Tyler, to build a family based on trust and respect, and to never let fear or pride come between us and the truth." My own vows were equally straightforward. "I promise to cherish you, protect our family, and never stop believing in the power of honesty to overcome any challenge. Tyler's contribution was the most important. I promise to help you guys remember that families stick together no matter what. 5 years after the threatening letters first appeared under my office door, I stood at the podium of the International Association of Special Investigation Units annual conference, addressing 300 fraud investigators from around the world. The Brooks case demonstrates that document fraud can emerge in any context, I told the audience. When we think about questioned documents, we typically focus on insurance claims, financial statements, or legal contracts. But the same analytical techniques that expose commercial fraud can be applied to domestic deception. I clicked to the next slide, showing Dr. Johnson's side-by-side comparison of Lisa's handwriting and the threatening letters. The perpetrator in this case understood my professional background and attempted to use it against me. She created a complex narrative designed to exploit my protective instincts while masking her true motivations. In the audience, I spotted several familiar faces: Detective Martinez, now Captain Martinez; Dr. Johnson, who'd become a leading expert in domestic document fraud; and Agent Williams, who'd helped develop the FBI's new domestic crimes curriculum. The most important lesson isn't about handwriting analysis or evidence preservation, I continued. It's about the courage to follow evidence wherever it leads, even when that evidence challenges your deepest assumptions about the people you trust. After my presentation, a young investigator from Portland approached with questions about maintaining objectivity in personal cases. "How do you separate your professional training from your emotional investment?" she asked. "You don't," I replied. "The emotion makes you want to find the truth more desperately. The training gives you the tools to find it accurately." That evening at the conference banquet, I received the IASU's Excellence in Investigation Award for my work on domestic document fraud. Tyler, now 17, and planning to study forensic science in college, sat at my table along with Jennifer, who'd taken the weekend off from teaching to attend. "Dad, are you famous now?" Tyler asked as I returned to the table with my award. "Infamous, maybe," I laughed. "But in a good way." Jennifer squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, both of you. Look how far you've come." She was right. Tyler had grown into a confident, intelligent young man who planned to follow in my professional footsteps. Jennifer had built a successful teaching career while helping to raise a child who wasn't biologically hers. And I had turned the worst betrayal of my life into a tool for helping other families. Lisa, as far as I knew, was working as a real estate assistant in Phoenix, unable to get her license reinstated due to her criminal record. Ryan Parker had found work in commercial development in Tampa, far from the real estate community that had rejected him. Their choices had consequences that followed them across state lines and professional boundaries. But those consequences were their responsibility, not ours. Our responsibility was to build something better from what remained. On a Tuesday morning in March, 6 years after the first threatening letter arrived, I sat in my office reviewing a case involving a suspicious workers' compensation claim. The claimant had submitted a doctor's report documenting severe back injuries, but surveillance video showed him moving furniture without any apparent difficulty. As I compared the medical report to previous documentation in the claimant's file, I noticed something familiar about the handwriting on an updated patient history form. The letter formations, the spacing, the pressure patterns. They reminded me of techniques I'd learned to analyze during my own case. I photographed the documents and sent them to Dr. Johnson for professional analysis. 3 days later, she confirmed what I suspected. The claimant had forged his own medical records to support his fraudulent claim. "Excellent catch, Daniel," she said over the phone. The suspect attempted to disguise his handwriting by using different pens and changing his grip, but the underlying patterns are unmistakable. Will this be enough for prosecution? Absolutely. The medical fraud combined with the document forgery should result in serious charges. As I prepared my investigation report for the district attorney's office, I reflected on how my personal experience had sharpened my professional instincts. The skills that had exposed Lisa's deception had made me better at detecting fraud in all its forms. That evening, I shared the news with Jennifer and Tyler over dinner. "Another bad guy caught," Tyler said with satisfaction. "Think he'll go to jail?" "Probably. Medical fraud is a felony, and the forged documents make it worse." "Good. People who lie to take advantage of others deserve what they get." Tyler's moral clarity sometimes surprised me. Despite experiencing firsthand how deception could destroy families, he'd emerged with a strong sense of justice and an appreciation for truth. Jennifer smiled at both of us. "I love listening to you two talk shop. It's like having my own personal crime-fighting team." "Speaking of which," Tyler said, "I got accepted into Wake Forest's forensic science program." "Tyler, that's fantastic!" Jennifer jumped up to hug him. "When did you find out?" "This afternoon. Dr. Johnson wrote one of my recommendation letters, and she wants me to intern in her lab next summer." I felt a surge of pride watching my son pursue the career path that had saved our family. Tyler had seen how truth could triumph over deception, how evidence could overcome manipulation, and he wanted to spend his life helping others find those same tools. "Dr. Johnson will be an excellent mentor," I said. "Just remember, the science is crucial, but the human element is what makes the work meaningful." "You mean like how you knew Mom was lying even before the handwriting analysis?" "Exactly. Trust your instincts, but verify with evidence. Together, they're unbeatable." Tyler nodded seriously. At 17, he understood concepts about truth and deception that had taken me decades to learn. Later that evening, as Jennifer graded papers and Tyler worked on college applications, I sat in my office reviewing old case files. Among them was the folder containing the 4 threatening letters that had changed our lives. I rarely looked at them anymore, but occasionally they served as reminders of how far we'd come. The fear and confusion I'd felt reading those first letters seemed like emotions from another lifetime. Now, looking at Lisa's disguised handwriting, I could see clearly what my emotional investment had initially hidden. The formation patterns, the pressure variations, the subtle tells that revealed the author's true identity. They were all there, waiting to be discovered by someone trained to look. The investigation had taught me that love couldn't overcome evidence, but it had also taught me that evidence could clear the way for better love. Jennifer's honesty, Tyler's resilience, and our family's commitment to truth had built something stronger than what Lisa's deception had destroyed. My phone buzzed with a text message from Captain Martinez. "Saw your presentation on the ISIU website. Impressive as always. Coffee next week to discuss a new case?" I replied immediately. "Looking forward to it. Always ready to help catch the liars." Because that's what I did now. I caught liars, professionally, personally, and publicly. It was a skill that had saved my family and built my career. And I was very good at it. The final chapter of Lisa's story came 18 months later, when Tyler was a freshman at Wake Forest, and I was testifying as an expert witness in a high-profile domestic fraud case in Charlotte. During a break in testimony, my attorney handed me a letter that had been forwarded from my old address. The return address showed Phoenix, Arizona, and I recognized Lisa's handwriting immediately. Inside was a single page, written in the natural handwriting I now knew so well. "Daniel, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but Tyler's 18th birthday is coming up, and I wanted you to know that I'm proud of the man he's becoming. I see his achievements on social media, and I know you've raised him to be everything I failed to be. I won't ask for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. What I did to our family was unforgivable. I just wanted you to know that watching from a distance, seeing Tyler succeed and you find happiness with Jennifer, has taught me something about consequences and redemption. You were right to use your skills to expose my lies. You were right to protect Tyler from my deception. You were right to build a better life without me. I hope someday Tyler will understand that even though I made terrible choices, I never stopped loving him." Lisa. I read the letter twice, then folded it and put it in my briefcase. When I got home that evening, I showed it to Jennifer and Tyler, who was visiting for the weekend. Tyler read it silently, then looked up at both of us. "What do you think I should do?" "What do you want to do?" Jennifer asked. Tyler considered this for a long moment. "I want to write her back. Not to forgive her exactly, but to let her know I'm okay, that we all are." "That sounds very mature," I said. "But I want to be honest about how her choices affected us. Is that okay?" "Tyler, honesty is always okay in this family." 2 weeks later, Tyler showed me his response before mailing it. "Mom, thank you for your letter. Dad showed me your message about being proud of who I'm becoming. I want you to know that I'm doing well. I'm studying forensic science at Wake Forest, working with Dr. Johnson in her lab, and planning a career in criminal investigation. Dad and Jennifer have given me a stable home where I never have to worry about lies or deception. I understand that you regret what you did, but I need you to understand something too. Your choices didn't just hurt Dad, they hurt me. I was 12 years old and I believed someone was threatening our family. I was scared for weeks before we learned the truth. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm also not ready for a relationship. Maybe someday that will change. For now, I need you to know that I'm safe, loved, and building a life based on the values Dad and Jennifer have taught me. I hope you find peace in Arizona. Tyler. After Tyler mailed the letter, he seemed lighter somehow, as if writing those words had closed a chapter he'd been carrying around for years. "Feel better?" I asked. "Yeah. I told her the truth about how I feel. That's what our family does." Jennifer smiled. "Your mom would be very proud of how you handled that." Tyler looked puzzled. "Which mom?" "Both of them," Jennifer said simply. "Lisa made terrible choices, but I think she'd be proud of who you've become. And I know I'm proud to be part of raising you." That evening, as I worked in my office, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us to this point. Lisa's deception had nearly destroyed our family, but it had also revealed strengths we didn't know we possessed. Tyler had learned that truth was more powerful than comfort, that integrity was more valuable than convenience. Jennifer had learned that love could be built on honesty without being diminished by caution. And I had learned that my professional skills weren't separate from my personal life. They were tools for protecting everything I valued most. The threatening letters that had once terrified me now sat in a file cabinet, evidence of a crime that had been solved and a family that had survived. Sometimes other investigators asked to review the case files, and I always said yes. The more people who understood how domestic deception worked, the fewer families would suffer what we had endured. But mostly, I thought about the future. Tyler was becoming an excellent forensic scientist, combining natural intelligence with the kind of ethical foundation that made good investigators great. Jennifer was being promoted to vice principal at her school, where her commitment to truth and fairness was changing how they handled disciplinary issues. And me? I was still catching liars, still protecting families, still believing that evidence could overcome any deception. After all these years, I was still very good at it. On the 10th anniversary of the threatening letters case, Wake Forest University invited me to give a keynote address at their annual Forensic Science Symposium. The auditorium was packed with students, investigators, and legal professionals from across the Southeast. As I looked out at the audience, I spotted Tyler in the third row, now a graduate student working on his thesis about domestic document fraud. Dr. Johnson sat in the front row, having become one of the country's leading experts in questioned document analysis. Captain Martinez had driven over from Winston-Salem, and Jennifer sat in the faculty section with her colleagues from the education department. 10 years ago, I received 4 threatening letters that changed my understanding of deception, investigation, and family, I began. Today, I want to share what those letters taught me about the intersection of professional expertise and personal integrity. I told the story methodically, the way I would present any case, establishing the timeline, reviewing the evidence, explaining the analysis that led to the truth. But I also talked about the human cost of deception, the way lies poison relationships and communities. The perpetrator in this case used my own professional background against me, I explained. She understood that my training would make me want to protect my family from external threats. What she didn't understand was that the same training would eventually expose her internal deception. A young graduate student raised her hand during the question period. Mr. Brooks, how did the case change your approach to investigation? It taught me that objectivity and emotion aren't opposites. They're partners. Caring about the outcome makes you work harder to find accurate evidence. But evidence, not emotion, has to guide your conclusions. An FBI agent asked about prevention strategies. How can families protect themselves from this kind of internal deception? Communication and verification, I replied. Trust is essential in relationships, but trust doesn't mean blind acceptance. Ask questions. Pay attention to inconsistencies. And remember, people who have nothing to hide don't mind being asked for clarification. After the presentation, Tyler approached the podium with Jennifer. At 22, he had my analytical mind, but Jennifer's emotional intelligence, a combination that would make him an exceptional investigator. Great speech, Dad. I especially liked the part about truth being stronger than deception. That's because you've lived it, I replied. You've seen how honesty can rebuild what lies destroy. Jennifer hugged both of us. I'm proud of you both. Look how far this family has come. She was right. 10 years ago, we'd been victims of an elaborate deception that threatened to destroy everything we valued. Today, we were a family built on truth, trust, and mutual respect. The threatening letters had been intended to manipulate me into giving up my family. Instead, they had led me to fight harder for what mattered most. As we walked across campus together, Tyler heading back to his lab, Jennifer to her office, and me to my car, I thought about the dozens of families I'd helped over the past decade. Couples facing document fraud, parents dealing with deceptive children, children protecting themselves from manipulative parents. Each case was different, but the solution was always the same. Find the truth, follow the evidence, trust the process. It was what I'd built my career on, what I'd raised my son to believe, and what I'd promised Jennifer on our wedding day. The truth was stronger than any lie, any deception, any manipulation, and I was very, very good at finding it. Epilogue, 15 years later. The call came on a Thursday morning in September. I was in my office at Brooks Forensic Consulting, the firm I'd established 5 years earlier, when Tyler phoned from the FBI field office in Charlotte. Dad, we just arrested a suspect in a major domestic fraud case. The evidence collection was textbook. Everything you taught me about maintaining chain of custody and objective analysis. Tyler was now a special agent with the FBI's white-collar crime unit, specializing in document fraud and domestic deception cases. At 27, he'd already earned a reputation as one of the Bureau's most thorough investigators. Congratulations, I said. What was the case? Husband was manufacturing threatening emails to justify taking out a restraining order against his wife. Turns out he was embezzling from their business and needed her out of the picture before she discovered the missing money. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Tyler had spent his career helping other families avoid what we'd experienced. Digital forensics caught him? That and good old-fashioned handwriting analysis. The restraining order application contained several handwritten statements that matched the language patterns in the threatening emails. Dr. Johnson consulted on the case. Dr. Johnson, now in her 70s, had become something of a legend in forensic document examination. The techniques she'd developed during our case were now taught in universities and law enforcement agencies worldwide. Speaking of Dr. Johnson, Tyler continued, she's retiring next year. Wake Forest wants to establish a scholarship fund in her honor. Would you consider contributing? Absolutely. And Tyler, your mother would be proud of who you've become. Both my mothers, he corrected. Jennifer had adopted Tyler legally when he turned 18, making their family bond official. That evening, I shared Tyler's news with Jennifer over dinner. At 47, she was now principal of one of Winston-Salem's most successful middle schools, known for her innovative approach to character education and anti-bullying programs. Another case closed, she said with satisfaction. How many families do you think Tyler has helped over the years? Dozens, probably. Each one represents someone who didn't have to go through what we did. Jennifer reached across the table to take my hand. Do you ever regret how everything happened? I mean, if Lisa hadn't written those letters, we might never have met. It was a question I'd considered before. I regret that Tyler had to experience his mother's deception. I regret the pain it caused. But I don't regret where it led us. Even though it cost you your first marriage, that marriage was built on a lie I didn't know about. What we have is built on truth we both choose every day. Later that night, as I worked on a consultation case involving suspected medical record fraud, I reflected on the strange path that had brought our family to this point. Lisa, as far as I knew, was still in Arizona. Tyler had exchanged a few letters with her over the years, maintaining a distant but civil relationship. She'd remarried, a retired police officer who understood her history and was helping her rebuild her life. Ryan Parker had eventually found success in commercial real estate in Florida, though he'd never returned to North Carolina. Some mistakes follow you forever, but they don't have to define your future. Our story had become larger than just our family. The Brooks case was cited in legal textbooks, forensic training manuals, and academic papers about domestic deception. But for me, it would always be personal. The case that taught me the difference between loving someone and truly knowing them. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Got the confession. Suspect's wife is safe, kids are protected, and the money's been recovered. Truth wins again. I smiled as I typed back, it always does. Just sometimes takes a while to find it. Because that's what I'd learned in the decade and a half since those first threatening letters arrived under my office door. Truth was patient but persistent. Lies might seem easier in the short term, but they always left evidence. And evidence, properly analyzed by trained professionals, would always expose deception. It was a lesson that had saved my family, built my career, and shaped my son's future. And tomorrow, I'd use it to help someone else. After all, I was very good at catching liars, and there were always more liars to catch.